Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone. Welcome back to this course on signages and wayfinding. My name is Sneh. I'm Associate Professor at Manipal University. Today we will be covering 9th lecture in this series, which is about signages for all, universal and accessible design. Let's see what things we will be covering in this course. We'll be talking about what is universal design, what is accessible design, what is the difference in universal and accessible, what is its significance, how we understand the cognitive impairment, and how signages helps in improving it, what is the color vision deficiency, what are the ordinary signages, how we will recognize accessible symbols, and each symbol are associated with something. We will be going into that details. What is a strategic placement of signages, what are the tactile signages, and how these tactile signages are planned. So, before going into the details of it, let's have a quick recap that what we have learned so far. So, in this course of signages and wayfinding, we have gone into the basics of signages and wayfindings. What are they? We've gone into the models, which includes the Miller model theory. Then we talked about the various theories of Calvin Lynch to J.J. Gibson. What is environmental graphic design? What happens in the evolution process of it? What is the history of it? Then we talked about what is a transit trip layout, how building analysis happens, what is the impact of color, contrast and finishes, how we can categorize or classify signages, what is a development and evolution in the field of pictograms, how culture and regional preferences impact on signages and wayfindings. We also talked about the material selection and technical requirements. We talked about how to calculate the size, the placements, and the overall signage size as well. We talked about signage design development, overall process, how it takes place. We then talked about the project coordination and project deliveries, which was the last lecture, in which we covered the document deliverables, how they need to be prepared, the sheets, how the coordination happens with the sheets, drawings, designs, and the message schedules, how these message schedules are prepared, and what are the softwares we use for this overall delivery process. How to calculate the bill of quantities. These were the things which we covered in the last lecture. Now, let's go back to the session where we will talk about signage for all. In this section of signage for all, we will be getting into the importance of signages, design in creating inclusive environment through universal and accessible design principles. Let's understand what this universal design is in signages. Universal design is all about making sure everyone, regardless of their age, ability, can use and understand the signage easily, which we call the word and term inclusivity. This means creating signage that is clear, simple and easy to navigate for everyone who encounters it. Universal design means the flexibility. That means signage should be flexible enough to cater the different preferences and needs. This means various communication models like visuals, sounds, touch to ensure everyone can access the information they need at that particular time. Whereas, if we talk about the accessible design, which talks about specific accommodations, that means accessible signage focuses on meeting the needs of individuals with disabilities, ensuring they can access the information independently. This could include features like braille signages, tactile signages, the tactile maps, audible clues, and visually impaired individuals. This also complies with the regulatory. So, SS signages must comply with the relevant regulations such as ADA, American Disability Act, especially in US, NBC in India, to ensure that legal accessibility standards are met. These compliance ensure that the signage installations are accessible to individuals with disabilities. Here, we need an integration of universal and accessible design. By combining the universal and accessible design principles, signage can provide comprehensive accessibility to all the users. We should aim for clarity, simplicity, and inclusivity while providing specific accommodation for individuals with disabilities. Universal design in signages and wayfindings. Universal design principle emphasizes catering environments, products, services that are usable by the people of all abilities, ages and backgrounds. When applied to the signages and wayfinding, these principles guide the design process to ensure that the navigation aids are intuitive, inclusive and accessible for everyone, ensuring inclusivity and equal access to everyone regardless of physical or cognitive capabilities. Universal design refers to the concept of creating environments that are accessible and usable by the people of all abilities and backgrounds without the need of adaptation or specialized design. When we apply these principles to signage and wayfinding design, we assure that our navigation system are intuitive, effective and usable by diverse range of individuals. Let's talk about the basic principles which are there in the universal design. Universal design has 7 different principles. Let's understand them one by one with reference to the signages and wayfinding, how they are applicable to this signages and wayfinding. We will talk about equitable use. Signages should be usable by all the peoples with diverse abilities, ensuring inclusivity from the outset. This principle emphasizes designing for accessible for all users, regardless their physical and cognitive abilities. For example, using high contrast color and large, easy to read fonts on signage ensures that the information is equally accessible to everyone, including those with certain visual impairment, maybe low vision. Like here, if you see, the contrast with the yellow and black is around 90%. So this could be a good signage and can be the good example for this. Next, the flexibility in use. The signage should be such that it should accommodate various preferences and abilities. This can include providing multiple modes of communication. It can be visual, auditory, tactile, and adjustable features to meet the different users' need. For example, providing both visual and tactile signages options in public areas allows user to choose the format that best suits their needs, catering to the diverse performance and preferences and abilities. For example, if you see the signage over here, this is a 5th floor written here, and here if you see there is a braille which has been used, which actually make both the normal user and the accessible people to use these. Now next is simple and intuitive use. Signages design should be straightforward and easy to understand. Clear symbols, contrast, and consistent layout and logical organization enhance the usability for everyone. Using universally recognized symbols and icons on signages such as arrows, directions, symbols for the facilities like restrooms ensures intuitive understanding across different culture, background and language barriers. Even people who are from different countries or unknown to the language of the local area, the people who are visiting for the first time to the different cities, these pictograms give them the intuitive indications of identifying this amenities. Next, coming to the perceptible information. The signage should convey information effectively through the multiple sensory modalities. This ensures that the information is accessible to the individual with different sensory abilities. For example, incorporating tactile elements like braille or raised letter on the signage provides the tactile feedback for visually impaired users, allowing them to perceive and comprehend the information which is presented. Next, the tolerance for error. The signage system should be forgiving of mistakes and misunderstanding, clear feedback, mechanisms for redundancy in information help user to navigate effectively. For example, placing warning signs with clear symbols and concise messages near potential hazard such as event, terrains or low hanging observers reduces the risk of accidents and mitigate the impact of error. Even in normal circumstances, placing the signage for confirmation also can be a good example of this. Sometimes people do often forget to take the turn or they missed one sign. The confirmation after a certain distance through the signage help them the error they made and they can rectify based on the next signage. Another thing which is low physical effort, the signage should require minimal physical effort to access and interpret. This includes considerations such as ergonomic placement and easy to operate interfaces. For example, installing motion activated or touch interaction signage system reduce the physical effort required to interact with the signage, particularly for individuals with mobility impairment. So rather than they seeing the signages from the corner and then coming back and then deciding, they can easily, from the interactive maps, they can easily identify in the initial point itself where they can go. The last, size and space for approach and uses. The signage element should be appropriately sized and spaced to accommodate different users. This ensures that the signage is accessible and usable for various vantage points. For example, ensuring adequate space around signage installation allows a wheelchair user or individuals with mobility impairment to approach and interact with the signages comfortably without obstacles. By incorporating these principles into signages and wayfinding design, we can create the environment that are more inclusive, more user-friendly, accessible to everyone, regardless of their abilities and background. Now, what is the difference between this universal and accessible design? Universal design usually focuses, as we gone through, inclusivity for all users, whereas the accessible design specifically addresses the need of the individual with disabilities. Universal design principles ensure intuitive navigation system usable by everyone. Universal design principle assures intuitiveness navigation in navigation systems uses in all respect. Accessible design provides accommodation like braille signage, auditory clues, and individuals with disabilities. Universal design promises inclusivity from the outset, while accessible targets specific accommodation for individual and disabled. So, both approaches are essential for creating truly accessible and usable environment. When implementing signage and wayfinding system, considering both universal and accessible design principles ensure accessibility for all the users. Let's now talk about the accessible. When dealing with the accessibility, it is important to think about the different needs of the people, like those who have cognitive impairment, so that spaces and things can be used by everyone. Now let's just understand what are the type of cognitive impairment encompasses in the range of conditions for affect and individual cognitive functioning, including memory, attention, perception, and problem-solving abilities. Here are some common types. Situational impairment. It is a temporary state of distress or confusion caused by a specific situation or environment. For example, include being overloaded with the information, experiencing anger or anxiety, or feeling overwhelmed in crowded space. This can be easily seen when you are late for catching a train and reaching to the station. Because of the crowd, you get confused and annoyed. So that particular time you are situational impairment. Now coming to the learning disabilities. Conditions that affect a person's ability to acquire and process information effectively. For example, this includes dyslexia, who has people who are feeling difficulty in reading, and then people who are difficult in doing the math calculations, and then the people who are not that good in writing. So for them, it also becomes difficult sometimes to understand in certain situations. Then mental health conditions. Disorders that impact mood, behavior, and cognitive functioning, like anxiety disorder, depression, bipolar disorder, etc. The next impairment is age-related. Normally, aging process can lead to a mild cognitive impairment or dementia in older adults, or even sometimes visual impairment. It can be like a memory loss or decreased attention span or slower processing speed are some common symptoms. Then neurodevelopmental disorders, which includes the conditions that affect brain development and result in cognitive impairment. For example, autism spectrum disorder, which actually affects your intellectual disabilities. Then the injuries. This means traumatic brain injury or any other kind of a brain injury which happens because of some accident or strokes. That can also affect your cognitive abilities. Additionally, individual may feel cognitive challenge due to factors such as educational level, that is literacy, or not knowing a particular language in different kind of environment. For example, I am good in 2 languages, which is Hindi and English. Suppose I go to Kolkata as I am first time visitor. The signages used here, there, I will be not able to recognize the Bengali. So for me, I am a literary impairment for that particular language. Although these days we usually go for 2 languages, but still we can see many places the local languages are given on the priority, and in that case the foreigners or the people who are not familiar with the language, the local language, have these problems. Understanding the different types of cognitive impairment is essential for designing environments, products and services that are inclusive and accessible to individuals with diverse need. By considering these factors, one can create solutions that accommodate a broad range of cognitive abilities and enhance the overall usability and user experiences. Now, let's talk about the consideration for color blindness. This is a major area where signage plays a very important role. The color blindness or color vision deficiency affect how individuals perceive color, preferably red, green and blue. Resolving color blindness concerns involves mindful selection of color combinations and ensuring the adequate contrast for readability. When designing signages and digital interface, it is advisable to avoid using light colors on text on light color background or dark color text on dark color background. Additionally, it is essential to consider common form of color blindness, which includes protanopia, which means the problem of red and green color blindness, deuteranopia, which is the issue with the red-green color, and then tritanopia, which is blue and yellow color blindness. These conditions result in difficulties distinguishing between specific colors, leading to potential confusions and information loss for affected individuals. By avoiding color combination that may pose challenges for colors blind people, we can provide alternative clues such as patterns or labels. We can assure accessibility and inclusivity in our design. Employing these accessible color palettes and design practices, we can enhance the usability and comprehension of all the user regardless of their color vision abilities. So, if you see in this image, these are the 3 major color blindness issues which we face, and we need to cater them, and this is the normal color. How the issue, especially with the color contrast, is very important to be catered so that the information does not get lost. Now, let us talk about the next thing, which is auditory. signage solutions. There are many works which has been done at the international platform for color blindness and auditory. In India, the codes have been in place, but we can still find many places where these are missing. As a signage designer, when we are working for any project, we need to see all the code related documents for easy implementation and regulatory implementations. So let's talk about auditory signage solutions. The public address system, which is PA. The public address systems are essential for delivering important information and addressing sudden changes or delays in transportation schedule. They play a critical role in assisting individuals with cognitive impairment by reinforcing key message auditory. You can see the example very often in railway stations. So the announcement system actually helps the people who are not good in this. Even they have installed the switching hearing aid, by which using that you can hear the information which is not that clear. Then you have hearing induction loop facilities. Hearing induction loop facilities are electromagnetic signals to transmit sound directly to hearing aid equipments and telecoils. These facilities are invaluable for individuals with hearing impairment, providing clear and direct access to auditory information. Audible announcements in lifts are vital for assuring accessibility and safety for all passengers. These announcements provide essential information about floor levels, emergency procedures, and other pertinent details. By incorporating auditory signage solutions like PA systems, hearing induction loop facility, and audible announcement in lift, we can significantly enhance the accessibility for individuals with diverse needs in public spaces. Now, the auditory enhancement systems. These auditory enhancement systems cover both in the public concourse area. Looking at the standard symbols at the entrance of the door, we can identify locations where these systems are available. So you can see this, which has a button system here. These systems offer various functionalities, including event, information disseminations, and emergency announcements. These systems assures that individual, while hearing impairment, can access the important auditory information during any event. This reminds me of one of the projects we were working on, stadiums, where we have to follow the international norms because the FIFA has to give all the approvals. So there, we did install such equipments, especially at the entry point of the various bowls of the stadium. Now let's talk about the symbols. There are certain international symbols for accessibility that has to be incorporated and has to be used as far as signage and wayfinding design are concerned. Let's look into it. What are those? The international symbol of accessibility, it represents accessibility for people with disabilities, which is this one, the person on the wheelchair. Audio description symbols, which indicates the availability of the audio descriptions for TV, films and videos, this one. The symbol for blind or low vision access, it signifies the access for individuals with visual impairment, this one. The sign language interpretation symbols, which means the area which has the availability of the sign language interpreter. Then we have assistive listening system symbols, that is the ear symbol. It indicates the availability of assistive listening systems, this one. Assistive listening system symbols for telephones. So, it signifies telephone based assistive listening systems. Then closed capturing symbol, which indicates that the availability of closed captions for media services, this one. Now, next we come to the placement of signages. So, placement of the signages is a critical for assuring usability, particularly for individuals who are visually impaired. Consistency in signage placement is especially for tactile signages. They enhance the usability, especially while using your particular path and decision points. For example, visual, tactile and combined signages should be strategically located on the intersections, or you can say the decision points. There has to be a consistency in placement of entrances, predictability and usability of for individuals for visual impairment. Assessing parking spaces should be primarily marked with the international symbol of accessibility and should be located close to the building. So, according to the various international laws and Indian laws, these are some of the important aspects. Maybe taking that accessible size, the eye level, what will be the eye visible cone and the accessible symbol for parking. We sometimes call it as a preferred parking. It has equal importance in architecture as far as accessible drawing are concerned, but as a signage designer, you need to know that if such confirmation is, if such signages are being placed on these preferred parking spaces or not. Now, going on to few more accessible features. The designated wheelchair spaces are available from ground level, ensuring step-free access from parking and transit area to various locations. Separate entry points are provided, indicated by signages. So, if you can see that the project we earlier discussed, if you can recall the stadium project, there was a separate demarcation for what will be the path for these accessible. Try to see any public building, you check how can accessible reach to particular destination without any difficulty. Making a ramp in a building in place of stair is mandatory, and putting the proper signage to locating that ramp is an important aspect, and signage designer has to make this possible by putting the signage on most visible location. Accessible toilets, clearly marked facilities with signage placed outside, listed on directional signages throughout the area. Putting signage on a door of a facility sometimes does not solve the purpose. So, it is preferred that if I am putting a signage or for a space which is in the corridor, there has to be a projected signage which actually helps the accessible person to travel less. and particularly to that specific space without roaming and using his extra energy in physical energy in moving all around in search of the facility. Then using the braille signage, where should we locate the braille signages? The braille signage has to be positioned so that the braille section is optimally located on a height of almost 1350 mm, which is above the finished floor level. For these signage, there has to be multiple lines of text. The entire message has to be positioned between 1220 to 1525 mm from the floor level, so that you have both the informations, and a normal person as well as a blind person can easily touch and understand that what the room or what the identification signage is telling them. Now, coming to the tactile information. Tactile, as the name suggests, the texture. The tactile information includes paving guidelines, paths, and warning signs that should be strategically placed and provide clear and consistent guidance. Additionally, the dynamic information system should be utilized wherever possible to provide real-time updates or disruptions, ensuring that the individual have access to the timely and relevant information. The tactile guide path. The paths are designed to accommodate movement in both directions, ensuring accessibility to all the users without restricting traffic flow to one direction only. The integration and other provisions. The tactile guide path are strategically aligned with the provisions of other disabilities, ensuring a holistic approach to accessibility throughout the environment. Height disparities. Variation in height among accessible objects are addressed primarily through the installation of lift or ramps, ensuring there is a seamless access to all the individuals with mobility impairment. The entry gate accessibility. The tactile guide path leading through entrance gate, particularly those across using cards, should always facilitate movement both in directions, with the widest gate designated for their purpose. Safety and pedestrian zone. The tactile guide paths are consistently located in the safe pedestrian area, prioritizing the wall being an accessibility to the users navigating the environment. This means the accessible design in signage not only enhance usability for individuals with disability, but they also improve the overall user experience for everyone. By considering the diverse need of a user and implementing inclusive design practices, one can effectively communicate information and assures equal access to all the individuals. The tactile signages has a very much importance in large gatherings. Let's take one example of a stadium building. Usually, stadiums are the places which has to manage lot of crowd and lot of restricted areas, entry locations which needs to be catered. The visually impaired people, it becomes very difficult for them to move along with the crowd. It is not just because there is a lot of rush. That is why these access are separately provided for the ease of these people. So we were doing one of the projects of the stadium where we gave them a separate path from where they can enter. After the entry, they can take the tickets, and from there they need to get into the separate bowls. So there is a specific tactile path they need to follow. These tactile paths are properly designed, and locations of these wheelchair, based on their sizes, the locations are separately designed so that the access can easily be possible. Since the seats of the stadiums are usually in steps, so we cannot have them in middle locations. That is why we usually took the accessible route in such a way that they should reach on the top of the bowl. For example, here are the lower seats of the stadium. So from here they will be going on straight the locations which is flat place, and they can have their chairs directly on it. The path of this row is usually kept clean with no seats. These locations are specifically designed for accessible people with physical impairment, and if you see, there is a clear space from the back so that a two wheelchair can move easily without hitting each other. We also solved the problems of their access to the retail shops, especially the eating joints, how they will move if there is a lot of crowd and the entire row is full. We had to create one another access from other side to divert the overall traffic and for the ease of the accessible people, so that they have to move or cover less distance. This is one of the examples. There are many. If you see in the urban context, we usually ignore the presence of these tactile signages. We hardly care the level differences, which is very difficult for any wheelchair person to move. The signages as well as these ramps, tactile paths, need to be in sync so that people can take actual advantage of the overall accessibility plans. I hope you would have seen, let me draw the section. The road usually have these curves without that too uninterrupted. This usually goes more than 200 to 300 mm level difference. For any wheelchair person, it becomes very difficult to pass this movement. For such spaces, it is advised to make this path in such a way that this movement becomes smooth. So apart from signage designer, the local authorities, the people who are actually designing the overall urban design, urban space or the landscape architects, they need to take care of this. And as a signage designer, we need to put our tactile pavings as well as the signage and inform them like, okay, there is a disruption, it is going down, then there has to be a warning texture, tactile path. Acha, now what are these warning signs, what are these guide rails? That is, whenever we put these signages, or when we see these, there is a tactile paving, everything has a meaning. You see, if you see here, you see this guide path strip, a long strip, and you also see these studs, right? It is a section, a sidal view, and this is the plan you see. So you must have seen these two things which has been used in the tactile path. What are they signifies? Let's get into that, right? Okay, you must have seen these. So these are some of the tactile paving options. This is one kind of a material which is in metal. We also have some tactile parts which are actually coming into the form of a tiles. So various companies deliver different kind of tactile pavings, be it a tile or be it blisters or separate strips and studs. So these are the square modules of 300 by 300, and these are common with the strips as well as the blisters. These blisters are of 60 mm apart, placed from center to center, and their diameter is around 2.5 mm. The height is just 0.5 mm. This means if we go back, this is 25 mm, and this, which is outside or the floor level, because here is your floor level, this is 5 mm. And these blisters, one module, are usually called as warning surfaces. So in the path, continuous path, if we see these, that means there is something there ahead. What is there? That we will be going through in detail in coming slides. Now the next type of item is the guide path, which are these strips. These strips are of 300 mm, which is 6 bars in a row, and the width is around 25 and height is again 5 mm, and these are the directional bars which follow the direction of travel in which the accessible people have to travel. Now, while doing or planning a pavement plan, we first start with the design phase. This includes identifying key area where tactile paving is needed, such as near the staircase, ramp, or pedestrian crossing. In our example, let's consider warning paving in front of the staircase. Once the location is determined, we move on to the selecting the appropriate type of tactile paving for each area, like for warning paving, which alerts individual for potential hazard like staircase. So they have to be careful, they become conscious about that because there is a level difference. Or design typically includes raised bumps or bars arranged in a specific manner. After that, we create a layout that outlines the placement of the tactile pavings in relation with the surrounding environment. This includes specifying the dimensions, the patterns, the color of each of the pavings. During this overall implementation phase, the construction team follow the layout plans to install tactile pavings according to the design specifications. This include carefully placing the tactile elements in the designated area, enhancing and ensuring that they are aligned with the correctly and securely fixed in the ground. Throughout this entire process, it is essential to consider the accessibility guidelines and regulations to ensure that tactile paving is effective and compliant with the standards. Regular inspections and maintenance are also play a crucial role in ensuring that there has to be a longevity and functionality of the tactile paving systems. Now, if you see in this image, we use this legend while planning or making the overall layout of the tactile plans. Here if you see, this is the location, a warning surface. So, suppose I am coming from here, this is how we are showing that there is a change in the direction, and then while going here, this is for the warning sign. That means after this there is a step up or step down. This is basically for bottom of the step, the point where the step is going to start. We need to include this into overall plan. Then this is another which is showing that this is a warning surface. I told you before that the blister ones are for indicating the warning surfaces. In this picture, here the accessible ball, since this is taken from for the stadium building, here there is a continuous road, but there is a turn. From here you have the access to the ball, so they can easily turn from here. Another one which is again the near the staircase, what the signs should, tactile paving should be. This is an example of what happens at the T junctions. So, if you see in the legend, this is for the T junctions. So, here there was a change in the direction, that is why if you see there is a change in overall direction of the path. So, this is the overall way by which we make our pavement plans. Try doing this for some of the projects. These are some another examples of pavement layouts where there is a continuous path, and then there is a disruption due to showing that there is a staircase. Here also there is a change in direction, and then there is a warning sign telling that there is a staircase. So, this was all for today's session. Let us have a quick recap what we have studied till now. So, we talked about what is a universal and accessible design, what is the difference in that, how different type of accessible design are there, how the auditory, color blindness and other signages we provide, how the overall tactile paving takes place, how we can strategically place our signages, and what rules and regulations the government has to be implemented. So, this is all for this session. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gillette Sam and I teach sociology at IIT Kanpur. Today I am going to tell you about the different characteristics of the movement of things around the world that are associated with globalization. We refer to these kind of movements as global flows. Now, the concept of global flows is quite important, and it's important for us to understand the different ways in which these flows might occur. Now, typically when people talk about the movement of things from one place to another in the context of globalization, they're under the misconception that things tend to flow from abroad into the place where they are living. In a very sort of stereotypical manner, there is this idea that with globalization, much of the movement that occurs is from Western countries into non-Western countries. Now, as sociologists, we know that actually global flows are multidirectional. So, which means that as much as there is a movement of flows from Western countries into non-Western countries, there is an equal amount of movement of flows from one non-Western country to another non-Western country, and in fact, a movement of flows from non-Western countries into Western countries as well. Let's take the example of food, for instance. You may be aware of a type of food which originated actually in China and then goes on to Japan, called ramen. For instance, the popular brand Top Ramen that is consumed in India is an example of ramen. Now, ramen, initially the movement is from China, which is a non-Western country, to Japan, which is another non-Western country. From Japan, this very popular food item travels to Western countries, such as the US, and also more recently to countries in Europe. So there you have a movement from a non-Western country to a Western country. And in fact, now we have very specific types of ramen being consumed in metropolitan centers in India as well. So there's another movement from a Western country to a non-Western country, which is India. So global flows in that sense are multidirectional. A second aspect of global flows is that they could be interconnected. An easy way to think about this would be if you have relatives who are traveling from the US or the UK or Australia, very often you'll see that people request them to carry electronic items with them. They say, oh, can you please get me a laptop, or can you please get me the specific camera lens that I'm looking for. So here you see that the movement of people, which is a person moving from one country to another country, is connected to the movement of technological items as well. So global flows in that sense are interconnected with each other. A third characteristic of global flows is that we could see that they happen in reverse. In fact, they are called reverse global flows. An example of a reverse global flow would be a style of music that you may be very well acquainted with, which is Bhangra. Now, Bhangra music is something that originated, as we know, in the state of Punjab. Now, as you know, Punjab is also a state which has seen a lot of out-migration, not only to other parts of India, but also to other parts of the world. So as people migrated to other parts of the world, they took their music with them. So when people migrated from Punjab to the UK, for instance, they hung on to the music that they were familiar with. So Bhangra moved from little villages in Punjab to the major cities where people from Punjab settled to in the UK. While in the UK, over subsequent generations, this music was transformed. It was not only performed in its original version, but it was also performed with the addition of many different types of beats, which are more familiar to people in the UK. At one point in time, you see that this modified form of Bhangra comes back to India. We're talking about the 1990s to the 2000s. So here you see that that a form of music that originated in India moves out of India to the UK, it is modified a little, and then comes back to become extremely popular in India again. So so in some ways, this form of music is returning to where it started out, but in a slightly changed manner. We call this kind of movement as a reverse flow.